At 2:17 p.m. on August 23, 1945, inside the makeshift detention facility at Camp Iloilo in the Philippines, 24-year-old Yuki Tanaka stood frozen as the American sergeant pointed at the woman next to her. "Measure her. Now." The tape measure in Yuki's trembling hands felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. Around her, 17 other Japanese women, nurses from the destroyed field hospital, watched in silent horror. She could feel their eyes. She could feel her own shame burning through her skin like acid. What Yuki didn't know was that this humiliation was just the beginning of a 72-hour ordeal that would break something inside her that would never heal. This is the story of how one Japanese woman discovered that surviving war meant surviving the peace that came after, and why her testimony was buried by both governments for 78 years. The sergeant's voice cut through the humid air again. "I said measure her chest. Write down the number. Do it now, or we'll do it for you." Yuki's hands moved toward her fellow nurse, Keiko. They had worked side by side for 3 years, saving lives, treating wounded soldiers from both sides when they could. Now, she had to violate her friend's dignity to save them both from something worse. "I'm sorry," Yuki whispered in Japanese. "Don't speak that language," the sergeant barked. "English only. And call out the measurements loud enough for Private Johnson to record." The room smelled of sweat and fear. The concrete floor was still stained with blood from when this building had been a Japanese communications center. Now it was their cage. 18 women, 2 American guards, 1 tape measure, and an order that would haunt Yuki Tanaka for the next 61 years of her life. But first, let me tell you who Yuki was before this moment. Because to understand the depth of her humiliation, you need to know the height from which she fell. Yuki Tanaka wasn't supposed to be here. 6 months earlier, she had been the head surgical nurse at the 14th Field Hospital in Manila. She woke up every morning at 4:45 a.m., prepared surgical instruments with the precision her father, a Tokyo watchmaker, had taught her. "Every second matters, Yuki-chan," he used to say. "In surgery, like in timepieces, precision is life." She had volunteered for the Philippines assignment in 1942, leaving behind her widowed mother and younger sister in Nagoya. She was 21 then, full of purpose, believing she was serving her country by saving lives. Every Tuesday she wrote letters home. Every Friday she organized medical supplies with an efficiency that made doctors twice her age defer to her judgment. She had saved 341 lives by her own count. She kept every name in a small notebook. American prisoners, too, when she could sneak them antibiotics. The Americans called them comfort women in their reports. But Yuki and her colleagues were registered nurses. They had medical training from Tokyo Women's Medical College. They had taken oaths. They had honor. None of that mattered now. By the way, where are you watching this from right now? What city? What time is it there? Comment below. These stories reach people across the world, and Yuki's story deserves to be witnessed everywhere. On August 15, 1945, when Emperor Hirohito announced Japan's surrender, Yuki and 17 other nurses were trapped in a medical outpost 40 kilometers from Manila. They had been treating wounded Japanese soldiers for 72 straight hours. They hadn't slept. They hadn't eaten more than rice balls. The morphine had run out 3 days ago. Men were dying with their teeth clenched around leather straps to keep from screaming. The American patrol found them on August 20th. "At first we were relieved," Yuki would later write in her hidden diary. "The war was over. We thought we would be processed and sent home. The American lieutenant who found us even saluted when he saw our medical armbands. That lieutenant's name was Patterson. He promised them safe passage. He lied. Instead, they were loaded onto trucks. No explanation, no destination given. The driver, a boy from Iowa named Tommy, wouldn't make eye contact. Later, Yuki would understand why. He knew where they were going. The facility at Camp Iloilo wasn't built for prisoners. It had been a storage depot, then briefly a Japanese communications center. The windows were boarded up. The only light came from bare bulbs that attracted massive Philippines mosquitoes that bit through their thin nurses' uniforms. The temperature inside reached 97 degrees Fahrenheit during the day. At night, it dropped to 60, and they had no blankets. For 3 days, they waited. No interrogation, no processing, just waiting. The younger nurses still had hope. "They're preparing our transport home," said Sachiko, 19 years old, from Kyoto. She still had her medical school acceptance letter in her pocket, folded into a square the size of a thumbnail. But Yuki noticed things. The guards changed every 6 hours, but they all had the same look when they glanced at the women. Not the look of soldiers guarding prisoners. Something else, something that made her tell the younger nurses to stay in the center of the group, away from the walls where guards could grab them. Then Sergeant Mitchell arrived with his special assignment unit, and everything changed. Mitchell was 34 years old, from Alabama. He had been in charge of supply logistics before this assignment. His paperwork said he was good at inventory management. The women were about to become inventory. If you want to understand what happened in that room and why both the American and Japanese governments classified these records for decades, please hit that subscribe button right now. We're uncovering the stories they didn't want told, the truth that makes everyone uncomfortable. Like this video, if you believe these women deserve to have their stories heard, it matters. It tells the algorithm that hidden history needs to see daylight. Comment below. Which country are you watching from? These stories need witnesses from every corner of the world. Now, back to that room where Yuki stood with that tape measure, about to destroy her friend's dignity with her own hands. The tape measure was American-made. The numbers were in inches, not centimeters. Yuki had to convert in her head while her hands shook. "Start with her chest," Sergeant Mitchell ordered. He was sitting on a wooden crate, notebook in his lap, cigarette dangling from his mouth. The smoke curled up toward the ceiling, where a gecko watched everything with unblinking eyes. "Arms up, Jap number 7. Keiko, that was her name, not Jap number 7, raised her arms. Her face was stone, but Yuki could see the muscle in her jaw twitching, the same twitch she got during 18-hour surgeries. 34, Yuki said in English. The word felt like broken glass in her mouth. Louder. 34 inches. Private Johnson, barely 19 years old with acne scars on his cheeks, wrote the numbers in his ledger. His hand was steady. Like this was normal, like this was just paperwork. He had a photo of his girlfriend tucked into his helmet band. Betty, from Ohio. Did Betty know what her boyfriend was doing today? Now the waist. Yuki moved the tape measure down. Her hands brushed Keiko's ribs. She could feel every bone. They had been surviving on 400 calories a day for the past month. The rice they were given had weevils in it. Protein, Yuki had told the others. Extra protein. 23 inches. Weight estimate? Yuki paused. This wasn't just measurement anymore. This was assessment, like livestock at market. Maybe 90 pounds. 92, Keiko corrected, her voice hollow. I was 92 pounds last week. Mitchell made a note. Honest, good. Honesty will be rewarded. But they weren't done with Keiko. Wait, Mitchell said. Take off the uniform first. We need accurate measurements. The room went silent except for the buzz of mosquitoes. One landed on Yuki's neck. She didn't move to brush it away. Sir? Even Private Johnson looked up from his ledger. You heard me. How can we get accurate measurements through those thick uniforms? Strip down to undergarments, all of you. Midori, the oldest nurse at 31, stepped forward. This violates Geneva Convention. We are medical personnel. Mitchell laughed. Geneva Convention? You're not under Geneva Convention. Japan didn't sign it for POWs. You have no protection here. He stood up, walked over to Midori. Besides, you're not POWs. You're detained personnel. Big difference. He was wrong about the technicalities, but he was right about one thing. No one was coming to enforce any rules here. What happened next happened slowly, like time had turned thick and viscous, like the humidity had gotten into the clockwork of reality itself. One by one, the 18 women removed their nurses' uniforms, the uniforms they had worn with pride, the uniforms that marked them as medical personnel, that had meant something once. Yuki's uniform had her name embroidered by her mother, tiny, perfect stitches that had taken 3 days. She folded it carefully, like it still mattered. They stood in their undergarments, cotton shifts, worn thin from washing in rivers, held together by hand-sewn repairs. Form a line, Mitchell ordered, shortest to tallest. They arranged themselves, Sachiko, barely 5 feet at one end, Midori, 5'6", at the other. No, no, Mitchell said. That's not right. Johnson, what do you think? How should we arrange them? Johnson swallowed hard. I don't know, Sarge. By attractiveness, Mitchell decided. Most attractive to least. You, he pointed at Yuki. Arrange them. Yuki's mind went white. How could she possibly? How could she rank her friends, her colleagues, her sisters in suffering by their appearance? I can't, she whispered. You can and you will, or I'll have Johnson do it, and he'll need to inspect them much more, thoroughly to make his decision. The threat was clear. Yuki looked at the women. Midori gave her the smallest nod. Do what you must. So Yuki arranged them, based on nothing. Random order, but she had to pretend she was evaluating them. She walked around each woman, pretending to assess, while actually whispering, "Stay strong. This will end. Stay strong." The measurement process took 4 hours. 4 hours of calling out numbers. Chest, 35 inches. Waist, 24 inches. Hips, 36 inches. Height, 5 feet 2 inches. Weight estimate, 95 pounds. Mitchell categorized them as they were measured. Number 4 has good proportions, category A. Number 11, too thin, category C. Number 16, acceptable, category B. Midway through, one of the younger nurses, Sachiko, started crying silently, tears running down her face, but no sound. No crying, Mitchell said without looking up. It affects your posture. Johnson, make a note. Number 9 is emotionally unstable. Johnson wrote it down, his hand shaking now. He was starting to understand what this was. The worst part? They had to measure each other, not the guards. That was the cruelty of it, forcing them to violate each other's dignity with their own hands, making them complicit. When it was Yuki's turn to be measured, Keiko approached with the tape measure. Their eyes met. In that moment, an entire conversation passed between them. I'm sorry. It's not your fault. We survived this. Together. 35 inches, Keiko announced, her voice professional, like she was reading medical charts. That's how they survived it. They pretended they were doing medical examinations. Routine physical assessments. By hour 3, the full purpose became clear. Mitchell had 3 lists now. Category A, officer material. Yuki, Keiko, and Ami. Category B, NCO material. 8 women. Category C, enlisted material. 7 women. Private Johnson finally asked, Sarge, what are these categories for? Entertainment duty assignments, Mitchell replied, lighting his 4th cigarette. The brass wants them sorted by quality. Category A gets the private rooms. Category B gets the common areas. Category C, well, Category C gets whatever's left. Yuki's English was good enough to understand every word. Her stomach turned to ice water. These weren't just measurements. This was an auction catalog. They were being sorted like merchandise. She caught Midori's eye. Midori had been placed in Category B, despite being the most senior nurse. The categorization wasn't about nursing skill or rank. It was about marketability. Tomorrow, Mitchell announced, Category A will be prepared for officer visits. Make sure they understand number 12. Number 12. That was Yuki now. I understand, she said in English. Good. Explain to the others. In Japanese is fine now. I want them all to understand what's coming. That night, they were separated by category. Category A was given a room with actual beds. Category B got wooden planks with blankets. Category C stayed in the original concrete room. Yuki, Keiko, and Ami sat on their beds, the first beds they'd seen in months, and couldn't speak. Finally, Ami said, We could refuse. And then what? Keiko asked. They shoot us? They hurt the others? You heard him. Category C gets whatever's left. What do you think that means? Yuki was doing math in her head. 3 of them in Category A. 15 others whose safety might depend on their compliance. If they cooperated, maybe they could protect the others. Maybe they could negotiate. We do what we have to do, Yuki said. We're still nurses. Our duty is to protect the others. But she wasn't thinking like a nurse that night. She was thinking about her father's watch shop, how he'd shown her that tiny gears had to work together perfectly. One gear refuses to turn, the whole mechanism breaks. They were gears now, nothing more. The visitors arrived at 9 a.m. the next day. 3 lieutenants, clean-shaven, pressed uniforms. They smelled like aftershave and cigarettes. One of them, Lieutenant Harrison, had a wedding ring. Mitchell presented the Category A. Nurses like he was showing off a new shipment of supplies. These three scored highest on the physical assessment. All trained nurses, so they're clean, no diseases, speak English too. Lieutenant Harrison walked around Yuki slowly. She kept her eyes fixed on a water stain on the wall. Count the edges of the stain, memorize its shape, be anywhere but here. This one, Harrison said, pointing at Yuki. Room 3. Number 7 for me? Lieutenant Cooper said, gesturing at Keiko. He was younger, maybe 25. He looked uncomfortable, like he didn't want to be here either, but he was here anyway. Ami was chosen by Lieutenant Brooks, who didn't speak at all, just pointed. What happened in those rooms over the next 2 hours is something Yuki never spoke about in detail, not even in her private testimony decades later. She would only say, "They didn't hit us." In some ways, that would have been easier. They wanted us to pretend we wanted to be there. That was the cruelest part. When they were returned to the main holding area, the other nurses surrounded them. No one asked questions. Midori held Yuki while she shook, not crying, just shaking, her body trying to process what couldn't be processed. Tomorrow, different categories rotate, Mitchell announced to the room. Performance affects your category placement. Good performance moves you up. Poor performance. He let the threat hang. That's when Yuki understood the full horror of the system. It wasn't just about humiliation. It was about making them compete for relative safety, making them complicit in their own degradation. Category A was hell, but Category C might be worse, and Mitchell was making them choose which hell they preferred. 3 days into this system, Sachiko broke. She had been Category C, then moved to B after the first rotation. She was scheduled for her first visitor that morning. Instead, she took a shard of glass from a broken window and opened her wrists. Yuki found her. The blood was everywhere, on the wooden planks, soaking into the grain. Sachiko was still conscious, looking at Yuki with eyes that begged for understanding. Yuki's medical training kicked in. She tore strips from her own clothes, made tourniquets, applied pressure. "Stay with me, Sachiko. Stay with me." "I can't," Sachiko whispered. "I can't let them. I'd rather die clean." "You are clean," Yuki said fiercely. "You're the cleanest person I know. This doesn't touch who you are." But even as she said it, she understood. They all understood. Some things, once broken, couldn't be fixed. Sachiko survived, barely. Mitchell was furious, not because she'd tried to die, but because she damaged military property. "She's Category D now," he announced. "Medical experiments. The doctors at Unit 731 left some interesting notes about pain thresholds." That was a lie. Unit 731 had been disbanded. But the threat was clear: comply or face worse. That night, Yuki made a decision. She gathered the Category A women. "We have to survive this," she said. "Not just our bodies, our minds, our spirits. We have to remember who we are." "How?" Keiko asked. Her voice was hollow now, like something inside had been scooped out. "We tell each other stories, every night, about our lives before, about our families. We keep each other human." So they did. Every night, after the visitors, they would gather and tell stories. Ami talked about her father's noodle shop in Osaka. Keiko described her wedding kimono, still waiting for her at home. Yuki recounted every detail of her father's watch repair process, the precise movements, the tiny adjustments that made time move correctly. They were trying to repair themselves the same way. Tiny adjustments, precise movements, trying to make time move correctly again. On the 7th day, August 29th, 1945, at 6:43 a.m., everything changed. A Jeep pulled up outside the facility. Different sound than the regular trucks, this engine was well-maintained, official. Voices, angry voices. One of them had eagles on his collar. Colonel Morrison from the War Crimes Investigation Unit. The door burst open. Mitchell jumped to his feet, his notebook falling, pages scattering across the floor. The lists, the categories, the measurements. All of it spread out like evidence. "What the hell is going on here?" Colonel Morrison's voice could have peeled paint. "Sir, we were just processing." "Processing? I have 18 registered nurses here who should have been repatriated 5 days ago. Instead, I find..." He looked at the women, some still in undergarments, Sachiko's bandaged wrists, the categorization lists on the floor. His face went from red to white. A Red Cross representative, an older Swiss man with wire-rimmed glasses, pushed past the soldiers. "Is anyone here injured? Who speaks English?" Yuki stepped forward. Her legs felt like water. "I speak English. Yuki Tanaka, head surgical nurse, 14th Field Hospital. Your name?" He was writing in an official ledger. "Your actual name?" For the first time in 7 days, someone asked her name. "Get these women clothed properly," Morrison ordered. "Get them food, real food, medical attention. Johnson, Mitchell, you're both under arrest pending investigation." Johnson looked relieved, like a weight had been lifted. He was just a kid who'd gotten caught up in something evil. But Mitchell smiled. "Colonel, I was following orders from Major. I don't care if MacArthur himself ordered it. Get out of my sight." Within 2 hours, the women were given back their uniforms, fed hot soup, examined by real doctors. But Yuki noticed something. No photographs were taken. The Red Cross man's notes were brief. Too brief. This was being contained even as it was being stopped. Within 48 hours, all 18 nurses were on a ship back to Japan. They were given documents to sign, in English, which most couldn't read, that they later learned were agreements not to discuss their detention experience. Yuki returned to Nagoya in September 1945. Her mother didn't recognize her at first. She had lost 18 kilograms. Her hair, once thick and black, had gray streaks. She was 24 years old but looked 40. She never practiced nursing again. Her hands, once so steady she could suture blood vessels thinner than thread, now shook constantly. For 3 years, she didn't speak about what happened. Then, in 1948, she tried to file a report with the occupation authorities. She was told there was no record of her being detained at Camp Iloilo, no record of a Sergeant Mitchell, no record of anything. The other 17 nurses scattered across Japan. Some married quickly, desperate for the protection of a husband's name. Some disappeared entirely. Keiko committed suicide. INS, 1947. She left a note. "I can still feel the measuring tape. Every night, I feel it." Ami became a Buddhist nun, taking a vow of silence that she kept until her death in 1998. Sachiko survived her suicide attempt, but never spoke again. Selective mutism, the doctors called it. Her family said she would wake up screaming, but no sound would come out. Midori, the strongest of them all, spent 30 years trying to get someone to listen to their story. She collected documents, testimonies, evidence. She died in 1976, her boxes of documentation labeled unsubstantiated claims by both governments. What happened at Camp Iloilo wasn't unique. Declassified documents from 2006 revealed at least 11 similar incidents across the Philippines and Okinawa in the weeks after Japan's surrender. The chaos of transition, the lack of clear protocols for female POWs, and the dehumanization that war breeds created perfect conditions for these violations. Of the estimated 3,000 Japanese women who served as military nurses in the Pacific, approximately 800 were detained by Allied forces. How many faced similar treatment? We'll never know. Most took their stories to their graves, bound by shame, official denial, and non-disclosure agreements they couldn't read. Sergeant Mitchell was never court-martialed. He was quietly transferred back to the States in October 1945. He lived in Alabama until his death in 1987, running a successful inventory management company. His obituary called him a war hero. Private Johnson testified once, in a closed hearing in 1946. His testimony was sealed for 60 years. When finally released, most of it was redacted. The Japanese government never acknowledged what happened to their nurses. To do so would mean admitting that Japanese women were violated by Allied forces, complicating their narrative of peaceful occupation and recovery. The American government classified all records of irregular detention procedures for female prisoners. They remain partially classified today. Yuki Tanaka died on March 15, 2006, aged 85. She never received an apology, never saw her story officially acknowledged. Her daughter found 200 pages of testimony hidden in a tea box. Written in Japanese, translated only in fragments, she wrote, "They want us to forget. Both sides want us to forget. America wants to be the good victor. Japan wants to be the noble defeated. Neither wants to remember what happened in those rooms. But I remember. Every night I remember. The tape measure, the categories, the sound of Mitchell's voice saying, "Number 12. I haven't been Yuki for 61 years. I've been number 12. These women deserve more than silence. If this story moved you, subscribe right now. Hit the notification bell. We're uncovering these buried truths every week. Stories that make everyone uncomfortable. Stories that need to be told. Like this video. It tells the algorithm that hidden history matters, that women's stories matter, that truth matters more than comfort. Comment below. Where are you watching from? Has anyone in your family shared similar buried stories? Let's create a space where these truths can finally breathe. Share this video. Yuki waited 61 years for someone to listen. Don't let her wait any longer. These 18 women, Yuki, Keiko, Ami, Sachiko, Midori, and 13 others whose names were erased, they were somebody's daughters, somebody's sisters. They were healers who became victims. They deserve to be remembered as both. War doesn't end when the shooting stops. For these women, the peace was just another kind of war, one fought in silence, one that left no visible scars. Thank you for bearing witness to Yuki Tanaka's story. Thank you for making sure number 12 becomes Yuki again. Thank you for remembering.